Greetings, fellow lords and ladies. Well, our look at Game of Thrones now continues on with the final episode of Season 4, The Children. Beginning at the Wall, Jon Snow emerges from the outer gate of the Wall and begins trudging north through the aftermath of the previous night's battle towards Mance Rayder's war camp. Jon eventually reaches the tree line and is quickly surrounded by wildlings, who bring him before Mance. Mance knows that he is wearing the black of the Night's Watch again. He brings Jon inside the tent and questions status as a traitor. Jon confesses that his time spent with the wildlings was all part of a plan orchestrated by Qhorin to get Jon to infiltrate Mance's army, and that Qhorin tricked Mance into trusting Jon by allowing Jon to kill Qhorin himself in a fight. Mance asks about Ygritte. Saddened, Jon reveals that she died at the Battle of Castle Black, though not by his hands. Mance normally proposes to drink a toast to her memory, and Jon agrees, but is hesitant when given an unfamiliar drink. Jon accepts after Mance assures him that if he wanted to kill Jon, poison would be the last of his methods. They drink to Ygritte. Mance then asks about the giant who got through the gate but never came out, and Jon informs Mance that the giant perished attempting to breach the inner gate at the hands of his friend Gren. Mance briefly knows that the giant was named Mag the Mighty, and he was the king of the giants, the last of the bloodlines stretching back thousands of years before the first men entered Westeros, to which Jon then glibly notes that his friend Gren was from a farm. They have another toast to Mag and Gren. Jon then proposes his terms to Mance: turn his army around and return home. Mance immediately counters that the Night's Watch is low on oil, arrows, and men, and when he sent his full force against the wall, the Night's Watch threw everything they had at him to repel the attack. Mance guesses that there were no more than 50 men left guarding Castle Black, but Jon lies and insists that there's still over 1,000 men defending the garrison. However, Mance calls Jon's bluff and reveals that after seeing a few men were defending Castle Black, he sent 400 men about 5 miles west to climb an unmanned section of the wall, and they will attack Castle Black's weak southern side as soon as he gives the order. Mance changes his demeanor and reveals that his people have suffered enough bloodshed and that he's no intention of conquering the land south of the wall. The wildlings are moving south to seek refuge from the growing threat of the White Walkers, just as those south of the wall are. Mance makes his counter-offer. If the Night's Watch will open the gates to the wildlings and allow them to pass through the wall, no more harm will come to the Black Brothers. However, if his terms are refused, his wildling army will slaughter every last member of the Night's Watch and move south by force. Mance notices that Jon is eyeing a cooking knife, and quickly deduces that Jon has come to parley with Mance simply so he can assassinate him. He notes that at that moment his personal guards are far enough across the room that Jon might actually be able to kill him before being cut down himself, but that Jon must have known he would die assassinating Mance. Mance is shocked and questions Jon if this is what the Night's Watch has sunk to, killing a man who led him into his own tent, who offered him relatively reasonable peace terms. Jon hesitates, but before anyone can make a move, war horns are heard from outside. Mance's guards safely grab Jon during the distraction, and Mance demands to know if the Night's Watch is attacking them. Jon admits that it was just as Mance said. The Night's Watch doesn't have nearly enough numbers to leave the safety of the wall and attack. Columns of heavy horse carrying hundreds of mounted cavalry charge out of the wailing camp carrying the flaming stag banners of House Baratheon Dragonstone, and are led by none other than Stannis Baratheon Davos Seaworth. The wildlings are caught in their own camp, resting from the battle the night before and only expecting attacks from the wall, so their eastern flank is completely undefended. As they are undisciplined and have no experience fighting heavily armored cavalry, they are quickly dispatched by Stannis' riders, who attack the wildling camp from both sides in 2 separate columns that catch the wildlings in a perfect double envelopment. Quickly after cutting down the wildling forces, Stannis and Davos ride up to Mance, who throws down his weapons in surrender, officially ending the wildling siege of Castle Black. Davos introduces Stannis as the true king of the Seven Kingdoms, but Mance rarely points out that they are not currently in the Seven Kingdoms. Stannis demands that it is customary to kneel when surrendering to a king. Resignedly, Mance says that the free folk do not kneel, knowing that Stannis will kill him if he does not. Davos, however, asks what a man of the Night's Watch is doing in the camp, and Jon explains they came to treaty with the king beyond the wall. Jon says he knows that Stannis is the true king, as his own father died supporting his claim, revealing himself as the bastard son of Eddard Stark. This makes Stannis regard Jon more seriously. Certainly, because Edward was an honorable man, and asked John what Ned would have done with Mance. John was surprised that Mance could have killed him or tortured him when he was his captive, but instead he spared his life. John tells Stannis that his father would have taken him as prisoner and listened to what he had to say. Before they leave the wildling camp, John also urges Stannis to burn the dead before nightfall. Back at Castle Black, a funeral is held for the slain members of the Night's Watch, who have been arranged in a huge funeral pyre in the castle courtyard. Mr. Aemon delivers a eulogy, saying that they died to protect the men, women, and children of the South who will never know who they were. That is the duty of the surviving Black brothers to keep alive their memory. Aemon closed his speech with the customary line, "And now their watch has ended," which is repeated by the gathered men. Some of the names Aemon is setting the pyre alight, which is continued by John and other men carrying torches. Stannis and Davos look on, along with Queen Selyse and Princess Shireen. John looks across the flames and catches the gaze of Melisandre, who is standing up at the side of the pyre. Melisandre seems intrigued, her piercing stare clearly making John uneasy. Afterwards, John enters the chamber of the castle where Tormund is being held. Tormund asks why blind old Maester Aemon patched up his arrow wounds, and John says that Aemon is sworn to heal all wounded men, friend or foe. Tormund asks if John really loved Ygritte, telling John that Ygritte truly loved him. John said Ygritte told Tormund this, but Tormund says no. He knew Ygritte loved him because all she ever talked about was killing him. Saddened, Tormund implores John that Ygritte's final resting place should be in the real north. John then takes Ygritte's corpse to the north side of the wall and builds a funeral pyre for her near a sacred heart tree. John looks at his lover one last time and lights her pyre, and weeps silently as he turns his back and heads home. Anyway, beyond the wall, far to the north, Bran Stark and the Reed children continue their journey to find the three-eyed raven, though they are on the brink of exhaustion. Jojen has grown sick and he is barely able to stand, eventually collapsing into the snow. As Mira begs Jojen to gather a little strength he can muster to continue forward, Bran calls out to them, revealing they have found the massive heart tree that Bran has seen in his visions. As they approach the tree, Whites burst up from the snow, grabbing Jojen's ankles and attempting to drag him under the ice. These Whites appear far older than those seen near the wall, appearing as ghastly skeletal warriors who move with surprising agility. Mira attempts to defend Jojen from the Whites, but they begin to swarm over Hodor, who is too scared to fight back. Bran works in Hodor's mind and begins fighting off the Whites with the aid of his direwolf Summer, but more Whites keep bursting through the ice and they are quickly overwhelmed. Just as all seems lost, the Whites around Bran suddenly burst into fireballs, and he hears a young girl's voice calling to him from a cave entrance at the base of the heart tree. Amidst the confusion, Jojen is repeatedly stabbed by a White before Mira can fight it off. The mysterious girl calls to Mira and says that Jojen is lost and that she must leave him if she wants to live. Mira hesitates, but Jojen urges her to save herself. Crying, Mira slits her brother's throat to grant him the mercy of a quick death. Mira runs to the cave entrance along with Bran, Hodor, and Summer, while the mysterious child covers their retreat by magically throwing fireballs from her hands at the Whites. Just as life drained from Jojen's eyes, she launches a fireball at his body, embodying his corpse and preventing his return as a White. They run into the cave, pursued by the Whites, which they shudder upon crossing the threshold of the cave. The little girl explains that the power which animates the dead corpses is powerless inside the cave. When Bran asks who she is, she replies that the first man called us the children, but we were born long before them. Bran realizes that she is one of the last surviving members of the Children of the Forest, the original non-human inhabitants of Westeros, who carved the faces into weirwood trees and taught the first men to worship the old gods thousands of years ago. The child leads them deeper into the cave, which is overgrown with white weirwood roots from the massive tree above. Other children of the forest peek around corners as they advance. Finally, they arrive at a large central chamber, its floor littered with bones. In the middle of the cave is an old man seated in the middle of weirwood roots, which have grown around and even through much of his body. Hodor places Bran on the ground, and Bran crawls toward the old man, asking if he is the three-eyed raven who has appeared in his visions. The old man admits that he is, having taken several forms in the past, but his true form is before them now. Mira is upset that her brother died to reach him, but the three-eyed raven says that Jojen, who possessed the green side as Bran does, always knew that he would die helping Bran arrive here. but that it came nonetheless. He informs them that he has been watching all of them through their entire lives, with 1,000 eyes and one. He continues by saying that Jojen died so that Bran could come here and regain what he has lost. Bran asks if it means he will regain the use of his legs. The Three Raver implies that Bran will never walk again, but you will fly. What that means. Anyway, in Meereen, Queen Daenerys Targaryen sits in her throne room where she is receiving the day's supplicants. An old man named Fenez approaches the throne, first speaking High Valyrian, but then revealing that he also knows the common tongue. Fenez explains that he was not one of the slaves who toiled away on manual labor, but a well-educated teacher and servant to Master Migdal, who employed him as a teacher for his own children. He tells Daenerys that Master Migdal's 70-year-old daughter Calla admires Daenerys, having learned of the Targaryen dynasty through Fenez's teachings. As a servant of Master Migdal, Fenez is well treated and even well respected in the household. But when Daenerys forcibly freed all the slaves in the city, she didn't understand the full-scale complications of still having to care for so many people. Fenez originally stayed in Master Migdal's house after she took the city, and Migdal's children begged him to stay, but Migdal and Fenez agreed that he must leave rather than face reprisals, forcing Fenez to become homeless. Daenerys insists that she had established mess halls to feed the free slaves and barracks to house them. Fenez says that he has visited these refugee centers, and they are not very safe. The young prey on the old, assaulting and robbing them. Daenerys says that her Unsullied will restore order, but Fenez points out that even assuming that they are able to ensure his physical safety, he has lost his livelihood and his purpose and is too old to start anew. Therefore, he has come to Daenerys to beg her permission to sell himself back to Migdal. She's shocked that he would want to be owned as a slave again, as a man might own a goat or a chair. He implores her that the young may rejoice in her new world, but for those too old to change, there is only fear and squalor. Nor, he says, is he alone. There are many supplicants waiting outside lining up to make similar requests. Daenerys is crestfallen and says she did not liberate slaves and merely owned to preside over the very injustice she sought to destroy, but surprisingly relents and admits that freedom means making one's own choices. Therefore, she allowed Fenez to enter into a labor contract with Migdal, but lasting no more than 1 year. Hearsay thanks her and leaves. Surprised so he warns Daenerys that the masters will surely take advantage of this, quickly making contracts with all the displaced former slaves until they are all slaves again in all but name. The next supplicant enters, a shepherd carrying a bundle in his arms, similarly to the herdsmen who came to show the bones of their livestock which Daenerys' dragons burned in order to be reimbursed. The shepherd timidly approaches and states that he is unable to speak the common tongue and requires Missandei to translate. Distraught, he tells Daenerys that the winged shadow came, placing the bundle on the ground and opening it to reveal charred bones of a human child. Daenerys' largest dragon, the black one, Drogon, has roasted the man's 3-year-old daughter Zala until this is all what was left of her. Horrified, Daenerys meets with Missandei Grey Worm in private to discuss how to deal with the growing threat the dragons are posing to the people of Meereen. Grey Worm reports that Drogon was last seen flying over the Black Cliffs 3 days ago, but he can no longer be found. Realizing that she can no longer control her dragons, Daenerys tells them to head with her to the catacombs under the city. Later, she leads her 2 remaining dragons, Rhaegal and Viserion, to the catacombs, where they are distracted by sheep carcasses. As they are feeding, Daenerys personally locks huge iron collars around their necks, which are secured by heavy chains. She weeps as she does so, as it is symbolically reducing her remaining children to chained-up slaves themselves. Daenerys wordlessly leaves and closes the huge stone door to the catacombs behind her, as her dragons go distressed and pathetically call after her when they attempt to follow and realize they are chained in place. Aww. Anyway, in King's Landing. Here, get back here. There we go. In Grand Maester Pycelle's laboratory at King's Landing, Cersei, Pycelle, and Qyburn stand over Sir Gregor Clegane, while he's immobilized on a flat wooden table and is revealed to be suffering from a massive wound centered around his right side. Pycelle informs Cersei that Oberyn Martell had coated his spear with manticore venom, poisoning Sir Gregor. The effects are horrific, with Gregor's wounds putrefying and creating a terrible stench. Pycelle says that he's beyond any hope of recovery, but Qyburn insists to Cersei that he can save him using more unorthodox methods. Pycelle chafes at his suggestion, saying that he is not even a maester, and that such arrogance is what led to Qyburn's expulsion from the Citadel in the first place. For experiments that were deemed both dangerous and unnatural. Cersei, determined to save Gregor from death, dismisses Pycelle and orders Qyburn to do whatever is necessary. Infuriating Pycelle, Gregor shuffles out of the laboratory. She asks Qyburn if his treatment will work, and Qyburn claims that his past work is any indicator he stands a chance of saving Gregor. Qyburn says that the process will change him, although Cersei seems only concerned with whether it will weaken him, which Qyburn replies, "Oh no." Cersei leaves, and Qyburn begins siphoning out Gregor's tainted blood. Cersei approaches Tywin and insists that she will not submit to a forced marriage to Sir Loras Tyrell. He attempts to dismiss the subject by stating that the matter is closed, but she persists and says that it's not just because she does not love Loras. He wants to ship her off to Highgarden and remove her from the court entirely, keeping her away from her last remaining son. With Cersei out of the picture, both Margaery and Tywin will attempt to get their claws into Tommen, each to manipulate him into their allegiance. Tywin refuses to budge, so Cersei plays her trump card. She threatens to destroy House Lannister by telling everyone the truth. Tywin seems confused at first. And at first, Cersei scoffs that he's merely feigning ignorance. With growing realization, she insists that even the brilliant Tywin Lannister had never noticed what was going on between his own children. And all it would have taken was one attentive moment in the past 20 years. Tywin is apparently confused, so when Mercer's grant, Cersei reveals all the rumors about her and Jaime and their children are true. She'll tell everyone and destroy Tywin's vaunted family legacy, even though it will also mean her death and Tommen's death. Tywin shakes with barely constrained rage, but in denial, he accuses Cersei of simply lying to anger him. Cersei says she doubts he truly thinks that and leaves him standing in his chamber alone. Cersei finds Jaime in the White Sword Tower, and he expresses disgust at her blatant attempts to have Tyrion killed. Cersei asserts that Tyrion killed her mother when she gave birth to him. Jaime is surprised that she still irrationally blames him for that, pointing out that he was an infant and had no control over what happened. He insists that Tyrion is her family, whether she chooses to accept it or not. She rebukes his claim, saying he is not her family and that they all have a choice, and that she chooses Jaime. She reveals that she has spilled their secret to Tywin. He is then concerned by her actions, asking how Tywin reacted to the news, but she says she does not want to discuss their father. She begins to seduce him, saying she chooses her brother over everyone else in the world, no longer concerned with whether anyone else knows their secret. He yields to her advances, kissing her passionately and throwing her on the table where they begin to have sex. In the middle of the night, Tyrion is so woken in his cell by the sound of his cell door being opened by Jaime, who reveals that he's orchestrated an escape plan for Tyrion with the assistance of Varys. He has secured a galley in the harbor which Tyrion can sneak out of the city and flee to the free cities. He leads Tyrion to a stairway leading up to a locked door, instructing Tyrion to knock on it twice and then twice more to summon Varys, who will lead him to the ship. Before they part ways, Tyrion and Jaime share a tender embrace and say their goodbyes, unsure if either will ever see the other again. Tyrion, alone, stares at the door at the top of the staircase, all deciding to use the secret passages to the right to keep to infiltrate the Tower of the Hand. He enters the hand of the king's quarters and sees a woman lying in Tywin's bed, with Tywin's clothes folded up on a chair. As he draws closer, he sees that the woman is Shae, who thinks it's Tywin calls out for him, calling him my lion as she once had done to Tyrion. When she turns over and sees that it is Tyrion, looking utterly betrayed, she grabs a knife to defend herself. Tyrion can retreat, but instead, he rushes forward onto the bed to wrestle from her grasp. Tyrion manages to knock the knife from her hands, and two continue to struggle violently until Tyrion manages to grab the necklace around her throat that he had given her and strangles her with it. Tyrion continues to strangle her long after she has stopped resisting, until she is dead. He sinks to the floor and sits next to Shae's lifeless body, weeping, and tells her he's sorry. He stares at the wall across the room and sees several weapons on display, among them Joffrey's old crossbow, and his expression quickly darkens. Ooh. Tyrion takes the crossbow from the wall, loads it, and heads down the hall to the privy, opening the door to find his father seated upon the toilet. Tywin seems surprised to see Tyrion, but quickly regains composure and asks Tyrion to lower the weapon. He recognizes that Jaime helped Tyrion escape his cell, telling Tyrion that they can discuss the matter back in Tywin's chambers. However, when he attempts to stand, Tyrion saves the crossbow, stopping him dead in his tracks. "All my life you've wanted me dead," Tyrion states, and Tywin acknowledges the validity of his claim. He attempts to defuse the situation by telling Tyrion that he admires his son's will to survive, despite any attempts to kill him, and insists that he was never going to have Tyrion actually killed. Tyrion admits that he just murdered Shae with his bare hands, but Tywin scoffs that it doesn't matter if she was nothing more than a whore. Tyrion is angered by Tywin's indifference and raises the crossbow. Threatening his father says the word whore one more time, he will kill him. Tywin balks that Tyrion will kill his own father in the privy, and again tries to convince Tyrion that they should continue to discuss the matter in his chambers. Tyrion says he cannot go back to Tywin's chambers because Shae's body is still there. Tywin dares Tyrion by calling his bluff, and mocking by saying, "Because you are afraid of a dead whore?" The moment Tywin utters the word whore again, Tyrion looses his crossbow bolt, hitting Tywin in the belly, knocking him backward. Tywin is encouraged that Tyrion actually had the courage to fight back against him, and that he will die in such an undignified way at the hands of his hated dwarf son. As Tyrion loads the crossbow, Tywin angrily declares that Tyrion is no son of his. "I am your son," Tyrion replies quietly. "I've always been your son," and fires a second bolt into Tywin's heart, killing him. Tyrion discards the crossbow as he leaves to find Varys. When he realizes that Tyrion has done something terrible, exclaiming, "What have you done?" Nonetheless, he leads Tyrion out of the castle to the docks, where Tyrion is stowed away conspicuously in a crate aboard the ship. Varys begins walking back towards the Red Keep, but stops and hears the bells begin to toll, signaling the discovery of Tywin's body. Realizing that returning to the castle is likely unsafe, Varys turns around and heads back for the ship, sitting next to Tyrion's crate in silence as they cast off for Essos. And finally, in the Vale, Branchar the Podrick painter, heading towards the Bladed Gate when they happened upon Arya Stark practicing her water dancing, was entering again off relieving himself, both returning from the Eyrie after receiving words of Lysa Arryn's death. Bran and Arya converse for a moment, both showing respect for one another as they are both women who have fought against what has been expected of them their entire lives. They are interrupted by the return of the Hound, who is immediately recognized by Podrick, causing Brienne to realize that the girl is Arya. Brienne tells Arya of her sacred vow to protect her mother, although she failed to do so because she was sent by her mother to return Jaime Lannister. The Hound immediately accuses Brienne of working for the Lannisters, noticing a Valyrian steel sword Oathkeeper, which Brienne admits was given to her by Jaime, frightening Arya into thinking that Brienne is working for the Lannisters. Brienne implores Arya to come with her to safety, causing him to mock Brienne, pointing out that there was no safety for Arya anymore. Brienne delights in the Eyrie, whom Brienne and Podrick are seeking out, is dead, as are her father, mother, and older brother, while the Stark armies are scattered and Winterfell is a smoking ruin. They draw swords and begin fighting, both eventually disarming each other and resorting to brutally fighting each other in hand-to-hand combat. Ultimately, Brienne gains the upper hand by biting off a chunk of Sandor's ear and knocks him down a cliffside. Brienne goes to search for Arya, who was slipped away during the melee and has hidden herself amongst the rock formations. As Brienne and Podrick search the surrounding area for Arya in vain, Arya makes her way down the cliffside to find the Hound badly wounded. He tells her that unless there is the Maester miraculously on hand to tend to his wounds, he's finished. Sandor tells her to kill him and scratch another name off her list, but she just stares at him silently. To goad Arya into killing him, angry Sandor begins recounting what he did to the butcher's boy and how he should have raped Sansa on King's Landing, but she remains silent. Sandor finally begs her to kill him and put him out of his misery, but she refuses and takes his money purse, leaving him screaming at her to kill him as she walks away. Arya rides a horse to Salt Pans on the coast of the Vale, where she sees a wharf with ships docked. She approaches the captain and asks if she can pay for travel to the north, but he says they won't go there because these days the north is full of war, cold, and pirates. Instead, the ship is going home, to the free city of Braavos. Arya remembers a special coin that the faceless man known as Jaqen H'ghar gave her, and instructed her to present to anyone at Braavos if she needed aid. She does so now, and the captain is utterly surprised at how she obtained it, but she says only Valum Regolis, as Juggin instructed, to which the captain gives the traditional response, Valor Dohyrus. He warmly welcomes her aboard the ship and insists that she will have her own cabin. As the ship casts off, Arya stands aboard the ship and watches as the shore of Westeros shrinks further and further away. She then moves to the prow of the ship, looking forward across the narrow sea in the direction of the free cities and Bravos. So now let's take a look at some notes surrounding this episode. The soundtrack playing over the credits is a rendition of Arya's theme and the main theme. In the official soundtrack release, it is titled The Children. HBO confirmed in a press release that this episode was extended to a 66-minute runtime, making the longest episode of the series to date. This episode ironically aired on Father's Day 2014. This episode marks the death of Tywin Lannister, shot with a crossbow sitting on the privy by his own son Tyrion. The song that plays in the background as Tywin is murdered is The Rains of Castamere. This provides the scene with an ironic motif, as the song about Tywin Lannister's victory over the Rains plays as he is killed in a humiliating manner, being shot while on the toilet. The episode's title appears to derive from the conflicts between children and their parents or guardians that are central to the plot. Tywin's with Cersei and Tyrion, Daenerys with the dragons, and Arya's with the Hound. It also has a double meaning, since the children of the forest make their debut. Davos previously explained to Ironbank of Bravos and the Laws of God's Men that House Lannister would continue to maintain strong control of the Seven Kingdoms as long as Tywin Lannister was alive and serving as Hand of the King, but that Tywin had no immediate successor who would carry on his strong rule. Queen Cersei's own subjects openly despise her. Jaime is presented as the Kingslayer, and Tommen is an inexperienced little boy, widely believed to be a product of incest. Tyrion is very capable, but Tywin disowned him. Even Jaime pointed out to Tywin in the same episode that despite his fixation on family legacy, Tywin had abused and alienated all of his children to the point that none of them could fill his leadership position when he died. Tywin was the only one holding House Lannister together as a political faction. Simply asking the Iron Bank what they thought the Lannisters' prospects were once Tywin was dead was enough for Davos to convince the bank to extend a new loan to Stannis as a potential future alternative. This episode marks the introduction of the Children of the Forest, the non-human original inhabitants of Westeros. While the animated histories and lore featurettes that appear on the Blu-ray sets have given detailed explanations of who they were, in the TV series proper they were only mentioned once before. In Season 2, Episode 3, What is Dead May Never Die. Bran first saw the large weirwood heart tree atop the entrance to the Cave of the Three-Eyed Raven in his Greenside vision, which occurred back in The Lion and the Rose. Myself states that Oberyn poisoned Gregor by coating the blade of his spear with manticore venom. A manticore is the large scorpion-like insect that the works of Qarth attempted to assassinate Daenerys with in the Season 3 premiere of Valor Dohyrus. The venom is the most deadly poisons in the known world. Tywin previously remarked to Breaker Chains that Oberyn studied poisons at the Citadel and is very knowledgeable about their creation and use. Just prior to the trope-like combat in the Mountain of the Viper, Oberyn's squire can be seen wiping the blades of his spear with a cloth, likely coated in manticore venom. Although not stated explicitly in the series, Oberyn's penchant for coating his weapons in lethal poisons is specifically why he was called the Red Viper of Dorne. This also provides some explanation for why Oberyn didn't simply kill Gregor immediately once he knocked him down to the ground during their duel. He never intended to give the man who raped and murdered his sister the mercy of a quick death. Even before the duel began, Oberyn wanted to ensure that Gregor would have a long, drawn-out death in utter agony. Pycelle mentions that extracted manticore venom is famously of Mantari origin. This marks the first mention of Mantaris in the series, as they are located east of the Free Cities but west of Slaver's Bay, on the direct land route between the two regions. Few actually take this overland route, however, calling it the Demon Road. Mantaris has a very sinister repute and is considered a city of monsters, assassins, and poisoners. While Cersei and Pycelle covering their faces with handkerchiefs due to the overpowering stench from Gregor's putrefying wounds, notice that Qyburn is standing even closer than them, but he doesn't share the same reaction. This seems to be a subtle hint that Qyburn's years of unethical medical experiments on living people have made him unusually accustomed to the smells of death and rotting flesh. This episode marks the first time in which the title of the ruler of the Seven Kingdoms is exactly the same as in the books. Daenerys is referred to by Missandei as Queen of the Andals and the Rhaenyra and the First Men. Until this episode, the title did include the mention of the Rhaenyra people, whose legacy lives on in the Dornishmen. The title was consistently given as the alternate King of the Andals and the First Men throughout Season 5, as well as in every previous episode starting with the very first episode of Season 1. Even at Tommen's coronation 5 episodes ago, he was proclaimed King of the Andals and the First Men, even though Oberyn Martell, the Dornishman/Rhaenyra, was standing in front of the crowd. For that matter, the TV series is not even being internally consistent on this point. 4 episodes ago in The Laws of Gods and Men, Missandei herself previously introduced Daenerys to other supplicants in her throne room as Queen of the Andals and the First Men. George R. R. Martin has made some statements which heavily imply that the use of King of the Andals and the First Men is very much an official name change from the full title used in novels, which, combined with the consistent use of the shortened TV title through the end of Season 5, strongly implies that the use of the full title Queen of the Andals and the Reign of the First Men in this episode was just a script error. Actor Halfborg Julius Bjornsson was actually sound asleep during most of the filming of the scene in which Pycelle and Qyburn examined Gregor's comatose body. Exhausted after all of his stonework for the previous episode. He had to be woken more than once due to dreading Alina Hades' lines with his snoring. This episode actually marks the first time that the name of any one of Daenerys' 3 dragons has been mentioned on screen. The black one, the largest, is referred to in dialogue as Drogon. Obviously, Daenerys named him after her late husband, Khal Drogo. The names of the other 2 have still not been mentioned. According to the books, the green was named Rhaegal, and the white/cream was named Viserion. The names are later given on screen in the Season 5 premiere of The Wars to Come. In a later episode, Daenerys explains she named them after her late brothers. The writers have mentioned in various interviews as Season 2 began that the dragons in the TV continuity have the same names as in the books. They just could find an opportunity to smoothly work them into dialogue. Sure, Daenerys giving a long expository speech directly to the camera explaining what all 3 of their names are. The line mentioning Drogon's name was given in Valyrian. Linguist David J. Peterson said that due to the grammar case rules of the language, Drogon's name was going to be spoken aloud as Drogo, though translated as Drogon in the subtitles. However, Bane Alpha and Weiss later wrote him back saying it should be scripted to be spoken as Drogon to avoid confusion. The show doesn't appear to be keeping track of Cersei Lannister's age. Tywin makes an offhand remark that he left Castle Rock to serve as hand for the Mad King when she was 9 years old. It's also been said that Tywin served as heir to the Second Targaryen's hand for about 20 years, and also that Cersei was about 17 when Robert's rebellion began. Logically, Cersei and Jaime could have been born around the same time that Tywin became hand to Aerys II. Tywin became hand not long after crushing the Reign Rebellion, which suppressed Aerys II. In Season 3, Cersei also said that, implausibly, she remembered the Reign Rebellion as a little girl. Though it is possible to reconcile this by interpreting that this was just one specific time when Tywin was visiting Casterly Rock, and Cersei was begging to return with him to King's Landing. Tywin was in hand for 20 years, but he was making sporadic visits to his home castle during that time. Rory McCann explained in the behind-the-scenes video for this episode that his fight scene with Gwendolyn Christie was filmed on location in Iceland. There's a rocky ground they are knocking each other onto is actual stone and volcanic rock, which is very hard and very sharp. Therefore, they frequently came close to seriously injuring themselves during the fight sequence. When Sandor counterpunched Brienne, the production team didn't want to look fake by having McCann simply pretend to kick her. To solve this, they tied a belt between Christie's knees. McCann could, therefore, kick the belt at full force without actually hurting Christie. At the San Diego Comic-Con 2014 panel, Bane Alpha openly admitted that the point of the fight where Sandor grabs Brienne's sword with his bare hands was personally added by them as a reference to the film Rob Roy. In the famous climactic sword fight at the end of the film, Rob Roy similarly grabs the sword with his bare hands. Most of the cutting power in the sword is actually from the force added by swinging the blade. So simply grabbing a stationary sword being pointed at your throat won't actually cause that much damage to your hands. In the case of Rob Roy. In the Hound's case, he was grabbing a Valerian steel sword, which is sharper than a razor. The TV series is not legally allowed to import horses from filming locations in Northern Ireland to filming locations in Iceland due to very special restrictions against animal importation. This explains why Brand and Patrick Stein lose their horses in this episode, because Brand's fight scene with the Hound is filmed in Iceland. The producers originally started filming in Iceland for season 2 for scenes set beyond the wall, but afterwards found some locations in Iceland which they felt would be nice for other mountainous locations such as the mountains of the Vale. This is also why Sandra and Arya aren't seen riding horses there either. The production team was allowed to use local Icelandic ponies. They are obviously not the size of real horses. They get around this in some previous scenes by having Sandor and Arya dismounted and taking a rest, while their horses are far in the background. The camera perspective makes it look like they're full-size horses very far away, instead of small ponies who are actually not that far in the distance. The Hound tells Bran there's no safe place for Arya. Where was he going to take her to then? The only options left were to bring her either to John or Brynden Tully, but both were impractical. The wall was too far away, while Riverrun was under siege. The script for the scene in which Arya meets Bran reads, Arya smiles. She likes this weirdo. Bran smiles. She likes this weirdo. Macy Owens recalled reading it for the first time and thinking, that's it. It's perfect. In this episode, Arya finally uses a special coin that Jack and Nagar gave her in Season 2, Episode 10, Valum Morghulis. As he indicated, she gives the coin to Barbossa and says, Valum Morghulis. She gets the formal response Valador Hyrus and is offered transport to Braavos. This episode marks the third season finale in a row, following Valum Morghulis and Misha, and Arya's last line in it is Valum Morghulis. Each column stands as host can be seen to number roughly 1,650 riders, making it 33 formations roughly 50 riders each, making a total of 3,300 men. Susanna said to Tycho Nestoris he commanded 4,000 men. This means he didn't buy the services of the Golden Company, nor any other sellsword company, but instead likely brought horses, weaponry, supplies, and transport to Eastwatch by the sea. In the TV series so far, as in the books, undead wights have been presented as fairly slow-moving zombie-like creatures. The wights that attack Bran's group in this episode are quite fast, and have rotted to the point that they're little more than skeletons. Director Alex Graves confirmed in a subsequent interview that this was indeed an homage to special effects legend Ray Harryhausen's famous stop-motion skeleton warriors fight scene in the 1963 film Jason and the Argonauts. Graves said that the homage was his suggestion, which Benioff and Weiss agreed to. Graves said, quote, When I read the outline, I called David and Dan. I went straight to Hollywood and met them and I said, Are we talking about the zombie guys that we've been doing? Or could these guys be viciously dangerous? They said, Oh yeah, that would be great. So they go across the snow plain and skeletons start to come out of the snow, a la Ray Harryhausen. So we sort of probably dedicated the sequence to. They come out of the snow 90 miles per hour, and they are here to kill Brandon and Jojen before they get there, and they've been waiting for like 1,000 years. Nobody knew the sequence, and it wasn't any of the marketing, which is the most brilliant marketing move I've ever seen. End quote. The Whites that attack Bran's group aren't entirely CGI creations, but some are wearing green screen suits, but they have prosthetics then added over them, i.e. parts that aren't too rotted away, such as their heads or chests or prosthetics, but an arm that entirely rotted away, nothing but bone, was produced by having the stuntman wear a long green sleeve, which could then be digitally replaced. There appears to be a camera continuity error when Jojen dies. Bran knocks him on his back to push him out of the way of an attacking White. In the next shot, Jojen is on his back but is facing downwards. He yells to Bran, Save yourself! The camera then cuts to Bran and then back to Jojen, who is now on his back again, and gets stabbed in the chest repeatedly by another White that pops up next to him. It's possible that shot of Jojen shouting, Save yourself, was originally from the beginning of the scene, when a White grabs Jojen by the ankle and he falls forwards. But the shot was then moved to later sequence for pacing reasons. Then again, a point made earlier in the season is that Jojen has grown very feverish and physically weak. So it's possible to say that in the brief moment when the camera cuts to Bran, Jojen tried to get up, but then fell back down facing in the other direction because he is exhausted from being so feverish. The crate that Varys hides Tyrion in on the ship at the end of the episode seems the same one that Varys used in Season 3, Episode 4, and now his watch has ended, to imprison the elderly sorcerer who castrated him as a youth, but whom Varys' agents had captured and shipped to King's Landing. It's about the same size and has air holes in it. Though even if it is the same prop, it isn't clear if it is meant to be the same crate in universe. On set, the Game of Thrones production team may have already had a man-sized crate with air holes in it, so they simply reused it. In universe, it's possible that because Varys already had a man-sized crate, he simply reused it. Tywin said this foreshadowed in 2 previous episodes. In Baelor, after Tyrion finished telling the story about Tysha, Bronn commented, quote, "I would have killed the man who did that to me." Bronn says the same line in the parallel book scene. In The Mountain and the Viper, Littlefinger tried to assuage Robb and Aaron's fears about leaving the safety of his home castle, by pointing out the people die all the time even when there is no apparent danger, and they remarked that people even die squatting over their chamber pots. If you haven't read the books or watched this episode with someone who has read the books and found this funny, this is why. Littlefinger also said that people die in their beds and at their dinner tables. Ultimately, this is also foreshadowing Shae's death, while calling back to earlier this season Joffrey was poisoned to death at the feast table during his own wedding. When the Targaryen kings built the Red Keep, they had honeycombed with numerous secret passages, partially as escape routes, but primarily so they could spy on their own courtiers. As the royal spy master, Varys' agents have made extensive use of these. Note that the tunnel Tyrion exits from runs directly through the main chamber of the Hand of the King. This way, Varys apparently knew the details of private conversations Eddard Stark had there with Cersei Littlefinger in Season 1. In Season 2's Would His Dead May Never Die, Tyrion was in the Hand's chambers when he told the 3 small council members contradictory reports about who he intended to marry Princess Marcella to, in order to determine which one of them was Cersei's spy. Notice that when Tyrion talked to Varys, he seemed to visibly confused that Tyrion wasn't telling him the same plan he'd previously told Pycelle. So implying the Varys' agents have been spying on the early conversation using the secret tunnels. Also, earlier this season in Lion and the Rose, Varys reminds Tyrion that his father had threatened to hang the next whore he finds in his bed, even though Tywin said this to Tyrion when they were allegedly alone together in Tywin's chambers in the Tower of the Hand. In the books, Tyrion has only heard rumors about the hidden passages, so when he is being rescued, he has to be shown the correct path through the maze of secret tunnels. Jaime led Tyrion immediately to Varys, but when Tyrion realizes they are passing under the Tower of the Hand, he tells Varys to wait while he heads above. That makes Varys give him explicit instructions on what path to take to get to the Hand's chambers. In the TV series, Jaime leaves Tyrion while still in the tunnels, and tells him to keep going until he finds the door that Varys is waiting at. But Tyrion then detours to head up to the Tower of the Hand, without a clear explanation of how Tyrion could have known the correct way up through the secret passages for the dungeon level to the top of the tower. Then again, the TV is introduced and invented in Season 2's Blackwater, which prior to the siege of the city, Varys gives Tyrion a map of secret tunnels, in case they lose the battle and he needs to escape. Therefore, the apparent explanation is that Tyrion simply has greater knowledge of the secret passages in TV continuity, given that Varys explicitly gave him a detailed map of them earlier. Cersei's seduction of Jaime in this episode, as he resists insisting they are in danger of being discovered where they are, is apparently meant to parallel the earlier scene in Season 4, Episode 3, Breaker of Chains, in which their roles are reversed. In that instance, it was Jaime who was sexually advancing on Cersei, and Cersei who was worried that they would be discovered in such a public place. Shae's gold necklace, which Tyrion strangles her with, is the same one he gave her in Season 3, Episode 7, The Bear and the Maiden Fair. In the books, the necklace she was wearing, which he strangled her with, was the gold chain made up of interlocking hand designs, used as a symbol of office by the Hand of the King. Tyrion was seen wearing in Season 2's Blackwater. Subsequently, Tywin assumed the office, so the gold hand chain passed to him. This was the equivalent of finding Shae in his father's bed, wearing a necklace with his father's personal sigil on it. A point The point made in the books is that Tywin drilled into his children the philosophy that they should never make a threat unless they seriously intend to follow through on it. The TV series has alluded to this, such as earlier this season in The Lion and the Rose. Varys points out that Tywin threatened to hang the next Tory found in Tyrion's bed, and that Tyrion knows his father never makes idle threats. When Tyrion confronts Tywin with a crossbow, however, and threatens to kill him if he says the word whore again, Tywin apparently underestimated just how deeply he had ingrained this lesson into his children. Tywin still thinks he's bluffing, despite the fact that he's the same man who specifically stressed to his son that he should never to make an idle threat. And yeah, there's also a part about Tyrion Tywin's closing scene, but I don't think we need to get into that. So yeah, anyway. So overall, as the final episode of season 4, this episode is just, wow, like emotional gut punch after emotional gut punch. So yeah. So overall, I give The Children 5 Iron Thrones out of 5. Anyway, tune in next year as we take a look at Game of Thrones Season 5, beginning with The Wars to Come. So, until then, remember everyone, winter is coming.